Teenagers, ghosts, and kangaroos. Oh my. Will Australia's Talk to Me be a scary success or a blunder from down under? Let me watch that for you and find out. Catchy theme song, yeah.
Yeah.
We open on a teenage house party, and we follow a man named Cole who is walking around asking everybody if they've seen his brother Duckett. And if the names didn't give it away, this movie is very Australian. Cole walks past someone's mom cutting vegetables, and she tells him that Duckett is in her kid's bedroom. I don't know how they do things down under, but I would never be able to get away with throwing this kind of a house party if my mom was home. Cole busts down the door and we see Duckett hunched over with all these cuts on his back, and he mutters something about talking to their dad, to which Cole says that their dad has passed away a while ago. Cole gets mad at the teenagers at the party because they pull out their phones to film Duckett, and right as Cole turns around to his brother, Duckett stabs him with a kitchen knife, remember from before, and then stabs himself in the face. At least it'll go viral. After the stabby, screamy scene transition, we meet the protagonist of the movie and antagonist of my sanity, Mia. She starts off as a sympathetic teen, dealing with the grief of her mother's overdose 2 years prior. Her relationship with her dad is clearly strained because neither of them really moved on. Mia's dad tries to bond with her, but gets interrupted when Mia gets a phone call from her best friend's little brother, Riley. Her ringtone is my alarm clock, and that gave me more of a visceral response than anything in this movie. We cut to the skate park where Riley talks to his friend. In my script, I put an asterisk and said, figure out his friend's name. I never did as of filming this, so I apologize. And his friend offers him a cigarette, but thankfully, Riley paid attention when Dare spoke at his school and declines the offer. Mia picks him up, and the two scream Chandelier by Sia before the two of them come across a kangaroo in the road. In case you forgot, this movie takes place in Australia. Mia goes to mercy kill the poor hurt kangaroo, but chickens out at the last minute and says another car will come by at some point. I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to teach us about Mia. Maybe she hates the thought of death because of her mother's passing. And to be honest, kangaroos are huge. I think you would damage your car trying to run it over anyway. Besides, it's Australia. I'm sure a giant spider will come along in a minute and eat it anyway. We see Riley's sister Jade on her bed listening to music and scrolling on her phone. Like Taylor in my last review of Imaginary, if you are a teenage girl in a horror movie, you are going to be listening to music and doom scrolling. I don't make the rules. Mia gets her attention by smacking her with a pillow, and I don't know if Australian people sleep on a bunch of rocks, but the pillow smacking sound effect is ridiculous. The girls end up looking at videos of people filming what appears to be a possession, and Mia weaponizes her mother's death into manipulating Jade into agreeing to go to a possession party tonight. If it isn't clear, I am not a fan of Mia. Sophie Wilde is a wonderful actress. Mia is just the worst. I haven't even finished complaining about Mia before she goes and makes things even worse. On top of guilt-tripping Jade into going to a sketchy party that she didn't want to go to, she also invited Jade's 14-year-old brother to tag along. Jade says he can't come, but he threatens to tattle on her since she didn't pick him up from the skate park earlier. Blackmail is a younger brother's specialty, and I know it well. At the party, Mia is a bit of an outcast that no one wants to talk to. I'm not really sure why she was so invested into going to this party if no one there even likes her, but she really must have wanted to hold the spooky hand. They don't call it the spooky hand. Actually, I'm not even sure what they call it in the movie, but I will explain the spooky hand in a minute. We meet Haley and Joss at the party, and they are pseudo drug dealers, only instead of selling pot or cigarettes, it's a weird, mysterious hand that lets you talk to the dead. We learn in a throwaway line that Duckett from the beginning of the movie gave the hand to Joss, and we all know how Duckett ended up. Mia volunteers as tribute to play the game first. She gets tied to a chair and Haley explains the rules. Number 1, once the possession starts, it cannot go longer than 90 seconds. Or, and I quote, they'll wanna stay. And if you die while they're inside you, they'll have you forever. Number 2, you light a candle to open a door and you blow it out to close it. Fairly simple. Number 3, then all you gotta do is hold the spooky hand and say, talk to me, to see a disgusting living corpse that no one else can see. And then you say, I let you in, and boom, you're possessed by a dead person. Now, I wasn't exactly cool in high school, but whatever happened to a good old-fashioned LAN party? My traumatic nerd past aside, Mia grabs the hand and sees a man, but gets scared and lets go before she gets peer pressured into holding it again. Remember, kids, if your friends want you to be a vessel for the dead, simply say no thank you. Mia then lets in this bloated lady who clearly drowned. This is also where all the promo shots of Mia looking possessed come from. The teens all film and laugh at her like it's the funniest thing they've ever seen, which again, maybe in Australia, getting possessed by the dead is the least dangerous thing to happen to you on a daily basis. Mia points to Riley and says, they like you. It's very gotta pay the troll toll to get into this boy's hole.
I feel like you're saying boy's hole, and it's clearly soul.
They wait 83 seconds before trying to end the game, and Mia just pulls away when they try to get her to let go of the spooky hand. And then they just sit and watch her while she screams run 100 times while looking at poor little Riley. They eventually get her to let go, and Haley just kind of says, whoops, we went a little bit over 90 seconds, hope that's okay. Like they didn't just say that spirits will want to keep your eternal soul if you let them in for more than 90 seconds. I feel like such a buzzkill. Excuse me, the rules clearly stated 90 seconds was the threshold, but Mia says it felt amazing, so there's that. We cut back to the kids at home, and Riley wants to sleep in his sister's room. He doesn't say it to Jade, but he got scared by what happened at the party. You know, the part where a close family friend got possessed by a dead woman and told him a man was standing behind him who will split him in half. But Jade is too busy texting and calls him a crybaby. He ends up sleeping on the pull-out couch with Mia, who at this point is being a better sister to Riley than his actual sister Jade. This will be the last time I compliment Mia. Riley falls asleep and Mia takes out his headphones and puts his phone away before we see a creepy dark hand get in on the action. The scene cuts to the next day before anything happens. Jade asks Haley to bring the spooky hand over to her house because her boyfriend Daniel wants to try it. Daniel was at the previous party, but he wasn't important enough to mention until now. That night at Jade's house, Daniel is the first person to be possessed by the spooky hand. He gets possessed by a ghost that belongs in horny jail, who says Jade doesn't get his engine going, if you know what I mean. And then looks over at Mia and starts doing some under-the-table activities. Side note, Daniel apparently dated Mia before he got into a relationship with Jade. Possessed Daniel then tips to the side, still tied to the chair, and Jade's dog starts Frenching him on the mouth. Everyone laughs and refuses to delete the videos they took of him, but I'm sitting here thinking you might as well go with it. Go viral, make merch. I Frenched my girlfriend's dog and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Boom, you're rich. The kids lock the promiscuous dog out of the room, and we get a montage of them grabbing the hand and getting possessed. Things come to a boil when Riley says he wants to try the hand and Jade says no. Mia, however, tells Jade that she doesn't have to be a bitch about all things Riley. and that he can do it for 60 seconds instead of 90, which causes the siblings to get into a fight and Jade storms out of the room. Jade is portrayed as a killjoy in this scene, and everyone else thinks it's really lame that she doesn't want her little brother to be possessed by the dead. I guess I'm a killjoy too because I'm Team Jade from this point on. Mia, being the bad influence that she is, ends up letting Riley get high off the ghostly supply. The ghost that possesses Riley looks to Mia and says that he's sorry and he never wanted to hurt her. Mia thinks Riley is possessed by the ghost of her mom, and when Haley says it's been 50 seconds, Mia begs for more time to talk to her. She was already reckless with Riley by letting him get possessed in the first place, and now she is willingly putting him at risk to talk to a spirit, which, spoiler alert, is not even her mother. Her motivation is crystal clear. She wants to talk to her mother's spirit for as long as she can, but this was the moment that made me hate Mia. It turns out that Riley was possessed for 2 minutes, which is double the amount of time that they agreed upon and 30 seconds longer than the 90 seconds you can be possessed before the ghosts want to keep your eternal soul forever. On top of that, the possession quickly takes a turn when Riley starts to smash his own face on the table. After a few hits, he tries to pull out his own eyeball, and I won't show you that because I love you, before Mia finally tries to stop him from hurting himself. The chair gets pulled across the room and shatters a window before Riley starts smashing his face on the corner of a cabinet. And again, the whole cast just sits there and watches in shock. Jade hears the commotion and comes in and puts her own hand in the way to stop the spirit from hurting her brother. And after smashing her hand with his face, Riley falls over unconscious and the kids call for help. We follow Jade as she's in shock and walks around the house, and we get a glimpse of what we assume to be is the spirit of her mother. We also get a scene where the kids speak to the police, and there's this one poor woman whose only line in the movie is muffled by an audio effect, and she's just blurred out in the background. I see you, police officer lady. After the kids are questioned by the police, Mia heads home with her father. In the kitchen, Mia lies to her dad and says she doesn't know what happened, but then she accuses her father of lying, saying he hasn't been honest about what happened with her mother. In her room, it turns out that Mia took the spooky hand from Haley and Joss, so we can go ahead and add stealing from her friends to the list of reasons why I don't like her. At the hospital, we see Jade, Riley, and their mom, who is played by Miranda Otto. Freaking Éowyn from Lord of the Rings is in this movie. That is badass. Mia has the nerve to show up and ask how Riley is doing, like she didn't just hospitalize a 14-year-old for her own selfish reasons. Then has even more nerve to cry and say she didn't give him anything and she didn't hurt him. Gaslight, girl bossing her way into being the worst horror protagonist. After being told to go home, Mia thinks she sees her mother in the reflection of a window, and she ends up following the spirit into the bathroom. There's a moment where a bathroom stall closes and we hear some rattling noises, and my immature brain thought for sure we're gonna hear some farts. Sadly, there were no farts, but there was no mom either, so. Daniel checks in on Mia and offers to drive her home, and on the way, he says that his family thinks that he's at his cousin's place, and because he's over 18, the police didn't call them, so he can't go home that night, and Mia offers him to stay at her place. He says it would be weird because he's dating Jade, but Mia says they're just friends and she doesn't want to be alone. I don't want to hear none of y'all Jade lovers in the comments after this. Mia almost killed her best friend's little brother. You might as well sleep with her boyfriend too. We find out Mia thinks Riley was possessed by her mother's spirit because her mother used to call her Me, and Riley called her Me, and coincidentally, Me is the only person Mia can ever think about, so I guess that fits. Mia and Daniel reminisce about the time they dated, and they look over and see Daniel for Mia carved into a door with a heart around it. Is that an Australian thing, or is that just wrong? Usually people would do Daniel plus Mia forever or five ever, not Daniel for Mia. What does that even mean? I'm for you? I'm for you? I love you, Daniel. I for you too, babe. Sorry, that distracted me way more than it should have. The two compare hand sizes and know that is not a euphemism before Mia tries to curl her grubby little man-stealing fingers into a handhold. Daniel the Chad pulls away before falling asleep. Mia stays up to watch old videos of her and her mom on her phone without headphones in. Not like anyone is sleeping in your bed, Mia. Go ahead and play that as loud as you want. Even 14-year-old Riley had the common sense to wear headphones when he slept next to you. Mia curls up to Daniel's leg, which is weird and uncomfortable, but if I stopped to point out every time Mia did something weird and uncomfortable, this review would never end. We get what I think is the coolest shot in the movie where Mia falls asleep and then literally just walks out from under the covers in her dream and kisses her best friend's boyfriend. Mia gets startled awake by a vision of her dad coming across her mom's body and notices a very wet woman crawl out of the corner of her room and starts sucking on Daniel's toes. Hashtag Dan Schneider moment. Mia, per usual, just stands there and lets it happen. She finally starts screaming for Daniel to wake up, and we zoom in on his face as he wakes up, and the camera pans down to reveal a clearly possessed Mia sucking on his toes. Hashtag Dan Schneider moment. Daniel rightfully leaves, and Mia then decides to contact her mother's spirit using the stolen property she's been keeping in her backpack. I don't know if it's obvious at this point, but because Mia was possessed for longer than 90 seconds immediately at the beginning of this movie, it made her susceptible to spirits, and once you get possessed, the spirits know all about you. Like how Daniel is attracted to Mia and not Jade. Sorry, Jade. So the spirits know her mother called her Me, and they know she is desperate for any connection to her deceased mother. So now, when Mia uses the creepy hand, she sees a spirit that looks like her mother, but we hear a water bubbling noise when she's speaking, and I want to say that is a callback to the spirit that possessed Mia originally, who clearly drowned as well. Mia's fake mom says that Riley is in danger and needs help before the two of them hold each other and fall asleep. I don't think the spirit falls asleep, but you get it. At the hospital, poor Riley is getting a bath from his mom and his sister before mom gets a phone call and steps out of the room for a minute. Jade tries to get Riley to speak, but instead he just bites her broken hand, falls onto the floor, and starts bashing his head into the tile wall. He laughs the whole time he's doing this and then starts licking up the blood before mom comes back in and starts yelling for help. I do think Jade could have done something in this scene. I understand she was in shock, but she was shown earlier being the only one of her friends to act in these kind of scenarios. So it was a little disappointing to see her just kind of dissolve and yell at her brother to stop hurting himself rather than her getting up and physically stopping him. It's time for the obligatory teen team meeting. We get some exposition dump that Haley and Joss got the spooky hand from Duckett, the guy from the beginning of the movie. They only met him twice, and he said they could keep the spooky hand because he is seeing spirits without using it, and that also he stabbed his brother and then himself. To me, this movie is a metaphor for drug use, and we can discuss that more at the end. But I don't think getting possessed by ghosts and having your eternal soul get tortured by the dead is a one-to-one equivalent to getting high. Just want to express that now. The kids decide to talk to Duckett's brother, who survived the stabbing, and they just find him at a bus stop. How in the world do you find someone at a bus stop? Whatever. Cole, the dead guy's brother, says they were always inviting Duckett to shit and he thought they were friends. So either the movie doesn't remember the previous scene where they said they only met him twice, or Haley and Joss's pants are on fire because they're big old liars. They all get on the bus and Mia starts talking to Cole. The shot had me wondering, why isn't Jade the one asking the questions? And better yet, why isn't Jade the protagonist of this movie? Jade finally comes up and explains the situation to Cole, and he clearly says the spirits weaken over time and will leave whoever they possess once enough time has passed. Please make a note of this, because of course, Mia did not. Jade confronts Mia when they get off the bus and says that she should not have let Riley use the spooky hand. And Mia says, we all decided it would be okay, to which Haley says, nuh-uh, it was all your idea. And then Jade says, you let my brother stay under for 2 minutes. Oh, and by the way, you slept with my boyfriend. She then says that she wishes Mia never forced herself into her family, and I don't know if I'm supposed to feel bad, but I remember clapping at this point. Remember when Cole said that the spirits get weaker the longer they possess someone like 45 seconds ago? Well, Mia decides that she knows best and thinks maybe they didn't blow out the candle when Riley got possessed, so they should do the entire thing over again, only this time remember to blow the candle out. Okay, even if that was the case, which, spoiler alert, it is not. It's been days since Riley got possessed. It's not like the candle is still burning. He was already possessed for 2 minutes. I don't think being punctual with the candle is all that important at this point. Back at the hospital, they tried to make an unconscious Riley play the game, but they don't get any responses. Mia decides to use the hand to try to talk to Riley's spirit since she thinks he's in limbo, and Jade and Daniel tell her not to, but as usual, Mia knows best. She ends up talking to the spirit of a little girl who Uno reverses and lets Mia in instead, and shows her horrifying visions of Riley getting groped and eaten by a bunch of naked ghosts. Mia screams and cries when she's back in the real world and says they are hurting him and they will never stop. Mia then decides that her job there is done, so she heads home and doesn't seem too broken up by the fact that she put a 14-year-old in purgatory. Her dad sits her down and apologizes for hiding her mother's letter to the both of them. It's a heartfelt goodbye letter to her family before she decided to overdose on pills. Again, Sophie Wilde's performance is really touching, and she can portray a ton of complex emotions with just her face, let alone her whole performance. But this movie has made me hate her character so much I'm not invested in any of this at all. During the daddy-daughter hug, Mia hears her mother's voice whispering that it's not true, that she didn't overdose on purpose. So Mia goes to talk to her ghost mom in her room and is not using the spooky hand at this point, so clearly things are progressing even further. Her mom is looking wetter than before and saying that sentence out loud with no reference photo to look at, is questionable. And she says that her dad is going to hurt her. We also hear Dad pounding on the door, yelling for Mia, but at the same time, we're shown Dad in the living room calmly opening up Mia's backpack. Mia's mom says that Riley needs to be put out of his misery because these ghosts will never stop torturing him. Long story short, Mia is hallucinating her dad kicking and screaming at her door while she talks to the ghost of her deceased mom, and ends up stabbing her real dad in the neck with a pair of scissors when he breaks into the room and sees why his daughter is screaming on the floor. She shrugs it off and decides to go to the hospital to stab a 14-year-old. Mia calls Jade and says she knows what to do and to meet her at her house. Jade says actually it seems like Riley is starting to get better because he was lucid for a minute earlier, but for some reason she listens to Mia and gets in her car and heads to Mia's house. This was all a trick to lure Jade away because we see Mia in the hospital parking lot making the phone call from her car. She has a little heart-to-heart with Jade and Riley's mom, and mom apologizes to Mia for being mad at her earlier and says she knows she would never hurt Riley, despite Mia's selfishness being the reason Riley got hurt. Mia says she loves them, and she asks her for a minute alone with Riley. She hallucinates him as this creepy old man and decides to use the same pair of scissors that she stabbed her dad in the neck with to stab her best friend's younger brother. The bar is so low for Mia that I'm giving her points for recycling, even if it is a murder weapon. Talk about going green. Mia sees Riley looking normal just as she's about to stab him, so she hesitates and then hallucinates the kangaroo from the beginning and decides it will be a way more humane way to kill an innocent teenager by rolling him onto a busy highway. Why ruin one innocent life when you can ruin everyone's? While this is happening, we cut to Jade discovering Mia's dad bleeding from the new hole in his neck that his daughter gave him. And she immediately calls her mom and lets her know that her BFF Mia has gone nuts. Jade rushes back from the hospital, and I know she's worried about her brother, but I couldn't help but notice she didn't bring Mia's dad back to the hospital with her. Like, this man is bleeding out onto his daughter's window seat, and Jade just pieces out. As Jade rushes out of her car, she notices Mia wheeling an unconscious teenager up a hill, through a broken fence, and onto a ledge above the busy highway. I know hospitals are busy, but I don't know how this sweaty girl wheeled a patient out of the hospital and onto the busy street without anybody else noticing. Mia's ghost mom, who is really embodying the wetness now, tries to get Mia to push Riley into oncoming traffic, and she promises to protect him and have him forever. Mia lets go of the wheelchair, and we're shown the perspective of a couple driving on the highway. Something smashes into their windshield, and we're meant to think it's Riley, but the camera slowly pans to reveal Mia through herself onto the highway. I guess the phrasing of "I'll have him forever" is what triggered Mia to realize that it wasn't really her mother's spirit talking to her. The movie doesn't really get into it, so I'm just guessing here. Mia wakes up from the accident, and for a second we think that maybe she's okay before she turns around and she's in the hospital, so it's clear that she's roaming the afterlife as a ghost. We see Riley fully recovered, leaving the hospital with his mom and sister. We also see Mia's dad, who survived the neck stabbing and Jade abandoning him while he was bleeding out, sadly wandering the halls of the hospital as Mia calls out to him. The lights then cut out and we hear a match strike and see a candle with a hand sticking out over it. Mia grabs it and is suddenly in a room full of men staring at her while she's holding a stranger's hand. I know what that's like. Before the man says, "I let you in," and the credits roll. Okay, let's talk about the ending while it's still fresh and nitpick it because I feel like it. Mia was under the influence of spirits when she died, right? Shouldn't her soul belong to that ghost lady who was pretending to be her mom? And if not, does everyone just walk the earth when they're dead by default? And now that Mia can interact with the hand, what happens if the guy who let her in stays under the influence for more than 90 seconds? Will Mia haunt him and try to keep his soul too? I understand from a narrative purpose there's some poetic irony to ending up where Mia did, but I can't imagine that she would all of a sudden want to make out with a dog when she possesses somebody. It seems like there were some really messed up dead people before, and now there's just Mia who misses her mom and sacrificed herself to stop hurting her friends. Maybe the dog kissing comes after like the 5th possession or something. I'm not quite sure. Y'all always pay more attention to these movies than I do and roast me in the comments, so please let me know if I missed something or I just don't know what I'm talking about. Ending nitpicks aside, I think the movie Talk to Me is a metaphor for drug use. Mia becomes addicted to the spooky hand because of the way it makes her feel, and it brings her mom back instead of her having to actually deal with her passing on. Much like how people use substances to kind of block the negative feelings they have about what's going on in their real life. With that, I think I've made it perfectly clear that I find Mia to be rather annoying. She is constantly putting other people in harm's way for her own reasons, and then in the end is lied to and manipulated the entire time by a malevolent spirit, even though she was warned that that's what spirits do. I guess I feel like I shouldn't be rooting for the struggling main character to throw herself into traffic, but here we are. Y'all know I like movies with metaphors, but I'm not quite sure what the lesson of this movie is. It's not like people get possessed in real life to get high, so there's not an actual drug equivalent to the spooky hand. But I feel like based on how young the cast is, weed is probably the only drug that they would have easy access to. And honestly, I don't think you should die if you smoke weed with a group of friends at a party. I'm sorry, Talk to Me. I feel like I say this every video I make at this point, but I would like to see growth or a lesson learned. I know this is more of a cautionary tale rather than someone overcoming adversity, but I would have liked it if Mia could have been rehabilitated in some way by the end. Perhaps coming to terms with her mother's passing, learning to rely on her dad and Jade's family to process and accept the truth and eventually move on in a healthy way. It's kind of strange to build up her dad revealing the truth about what happened to her mom, and Jade's mom forgiving her for what happened to Riley and welcoming her in as a member of the family just to throw it all away a few minutes later. I know it would be cheesy and predictable to end it happy, but is the juice really worth the squeeze to show someone who's struggling with a metaphorical drug addiction that they would be better off throwing themselves into traffic rather than rehabilitation? It was said in the film that Riley held onto the hand for 2 minutes, whereas Mia only held it for 90 seconds. Clearly, Riley had it way worse, and he ended up making a full recovery. But Mia did use the hand multiple times during the movie, so perhaps using it frequently gave the spirits more power over her, and that's why they didn't weaken over time. But going off the movie's logic, it seems like a week-long detox, perhaps at some sort of rehab center, would have at least made the spirit's influence less powerful. But either way, I can see why people like this movie. It's got a fun premise, it's light on scares, there's some cool shots, some great effects, and it leaves you with a lot to discuss. I personally was mostly just frustrated with Mia the entire movie, so I didn't enjoy it as much as other people did. I would only recommend watching Talk to Me if you already own Paramount Plus, which is what I saw it on, or another streaming platform that has it. Otherwise, I would say save your money. Well, folks, it's that time again. You'll either be chewing me out in the comments, or you've already fallen asleep watching this video on your iPad in bed. Good night, you sweet angel. But if you've made it this far, I would really appreciate it if you click that subscribe button. Maybe give it a thumbs up if you're feeling it. If you want to see your name featured at the end of my videos, as well as get invited to our monthly movie viewing party, you can join the Patreon linked below. I stream music and games, and I talk on Twitch, so if we need to discuss movies further in a live setting, you can follow me there. It's also linked down below. And I just want to say thank you so much for all your support. I really do love making these videos, even if they take me forever, and I couldn't do any of it without you guys, so thanks again. As always, I'm Matt Hall, and if you don't have the time or the dime, let me watch that for you. Bye-bye!